Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody is well. Happy Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us. We've been talking about this idea of what is reflection. It's so important because if you don't have the time, then we're not in business here. But if you're putting the time in to reflect, thresholds, moments, you have to ask yourself, like, what am I doing to enable me to be more productive? Otherwise, like, what's the point? You don't win by just spending time. You could be spending time and getting very little done. Even if you're journaling, right? Even if you're in the middle of doing things that are supposed to be getting out the thinking, but if you're not deliberate in your thinking, then you're missing out on really the growth. So what I want to do today is I want to bring up one or two ideas just to think about. And in doing so, hopefully, if we think this way, we'll be able to use the time more productively. So let's just talk about one. Many times in life, one of the great things that we're doing all the time, if you will, that's blocking us from achieving the success that we want, is that we don't have perspective on everything that we need. Right? If you're talking to somebody, you don't know what's in their head. So much of what you're doing is trying to convince them. Think about how much time you spend trying to get someone else to think the way you think. How much of your day is spent in thinking about how to get somebody else to give you what you want, whether that's attention or money or success, whatever, I don't know. So much of what we do is relationships with other people. And so much of what's blocking us is the bias that we have because we think the way we think. And we don't think the way they think. We don't know what's in their minds. So what happens is we end up trying to figure it out or not. Interacting with people, not achieving what we wanted from the interaction, and then we go back and either have to deal with those consequences or we got to go back and do it again. How many times a day are we engaging with other people and then dealing with either the success or the frustrations of that? So let me give you one practical exercise to do from a reflections perspective. And in business and in life, maybe one of the most powerful tools that you have is the tool of empathy. You see, what happens to us is that a lot of times the reason why we're not more successful is because we don't know. We don't really know what the other person needs. We don't really know what the customer wants. We don't really know what our boss is thinking. We don't really know what our spouse is thinking, or our children are thinking, or our friends are thinking, or God is thinking. We don't really know. And so we approach situations from our perspective and assume that because it makes sense to us, it should make sense to them. Many times, we're using the same language and it has entirely different meanings. There are times I will say something and then ask people what I thought they heard, and people will hear entirely different things. And for the same presentation. The mind of another is so complex, just like ours is, but it's so different from ours that it's almost impossible for us to be able to understand what somebody else is thinking. So we use our perspective, but our perspective isn't right because they don't have our perspective. And so the disconnect really is that you don't know what I'm thinking, I don't know what you're thinking. So when we use words, when we say things, they have entirely different meanings to them. And so we each go away with not the full picture. And the impact of that is what we deal with in between. The misunderstandings, the lack of alignment. We're not all rowing the same boat the same way. Most people spend their time pre or post a relationship or conversation is, how do I get somebody else to see the way I see it? Few people spend the time thinking, how do I understand the way the other person sees it? There's a huge difference in those two people. Empathy. Empathy is understanding how somebody thinks, feeling with them, connecting with them, trying to not create a distance between the two of you, but to create an alignment. I'm going to go and relate to somebody in any area of my life, family, friends, business, whatever, religion. How much of my time am I reflecting on what I think they are thinking? How are they seeing the world? What is in their mind? What are they struggling with? Last night I had the opportunity to sit in a really cool leadership event. And in this leadership event, there was this incredible young people. And then we threw out a scenario to them about a community where there was a fight within the school as to how to teach the kids subjects. And these parents wanted this and these parents wanted that, and how would you deal with it? And afterwards, when I tried to wrap up, I was trying to explain to the guys that there is no answer you can come up with, because the answer that you're coming up with was in your mind. And these guys were incredible. I mean, really, like future leaders. That the goal, if you are the principal in this scenario, the goal is not to come up with any answers in the beginning. The goal is to be empathetic to the different parties and understand where they're coming from. What's their fears? Why are they taking the stance? What is their understanding of this subject that they're so careful that they want to make sure they teach it, versus the other parents who want to get rid of it, let's say? Why do these parents stand? Where are they from? What are they worried about? When you are trying to understand someone else's mind, now you are putting yourself in a place where new solutions come out because you've never seen the world from their perspective before. And when your mind see the world from someone else's perspective, you now gain an entirely new way of seeing it, which will open the door to brand new ways of doing things. One of the most critical moments of reflection that you should, and we should be engaged in constantly, is the reflection of, did I understand the other person correctly? What did I take from this meeting that gave me some more insight as to the other person's mind? What did I take from this experience? Now, if you're doing something that is really frontal from you, you can ask, well, what did I maybe miss as to what I thought would have been, well received, but it wasn't? But when you're interacting with people, really, there's many reflections, but one reflection we can start working on together here is that I understand them. You see, I thought when they said this, they meant this, because if I would have said those words, that's what I would have meant. But is that right? Maybe when they said, no thank you, they were really being nice about it. Maybe when they said, I don't want it, or no, whatever, or yes, maybe whenever what they were saying, it wasn't the way I would have said it. But it doesn't mean what I think it means. The kid's 8. The kid's 17. It's a woman, it's a man. It's a boss in charge. He's worried about 10 other things, or she's worried about 15 other. There's so many things that we could put ourselves into the minds of somebody else and learn so much about them and what they're thinking about and what they're scared about, so that the interactions that we have with people become richer and richer and richer, and not more rigid and more rigid and more rigid. That's my wife. That's just who she is. Just who she is. The reason why you think that is because you would never do that, because you're not your wife. You're not your husband. You intuitively, or you through your life, have picked up on something that he's not getting. Yeah, but why? Is he trying to be insensitive? Where's he coming from? What's in his mind? What is he worried about? I got a kid. He's 17 years old. But I remember being 17. Do you remember being 17? Really? You remember being 17 in 2022? When were you 17? What were the issues in your life when you were 17? Same issues in the kid's life? You know, sometimes moms and 17-year-old boys fight. Maybe the mom doesn't know the 17-year-old boy. Because do you remember being a 17-year-old boy in 2022? And maybe the boy doesn't understand his mom. Mom's not trying to overwhelm you. She just wants you to check in. It's her way of saying I love you. That's what moms do. One of these critical breaks in the world is when one person takes the time to understand the other. Put the dukes down. Stop trying to figure out more ways to tell somebody what's in your head. And instead think of more ways to understand what's in their head. Because if you just spend more time thinking about what's in their head, you would come up with an enormous amount of more effective ways to tell them what's in your head. But either we're just too busy to reflect, or we're not really reflecting in a way that is the most powerful. Think about this today. Just go through your day. Just go through your day and take a moment and ask yourself, maybe I should, in this particular case, just slow down. What's in that person's head? How are they seeing the world? And when you're done with the interaction, have a moment of reflection. Did I understand them? What did I learn from them? How do they see it? Because the more empathy that you have for somebody else, the more you try to understand them, the more you'll be able to have an actual alignment and be more effective. All right, we'll talk about this. All right, everybody, have a great day. With God's help, I cannot wait to see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.
Living on a lifeline, the world doesn't ever seem to change. Looking for the sunshine, but you're caught up in the rain. It's like your eyes are wide open, but you cannot see. You're watching life pass you by like 1, 2, 3. Walking in destruction, the winds of life blur your vision. All the devastation, forever feels like you're on the run. It's time, no one else can set you free. You're locked inside, and only you have got the key.